The thing you don't want to do is hold it towards the bottom, because you'll smash your fingers pretty much every time. So if you're going to use your fingers, you want to have a solid platform. This guy's wiggling a little bit. So there you go. And like I said, it requires a good amount of force. So set it up and you want to tap it a couple times. Make sure it's stable and it feels pretty sturdy. And so tap it a couple times. Sometimes it takes a few whacks. And so little flake came off. I'll try for another one. Percussion flaking, you have your hammerstone, something that fits nicely into your hand. I like kind of a billet, something a little bit longer, a little bit more of a striking platform. And this stone can be, ideally it's something that's harder than the stone you're trying to break, but it doesn't have to be as long as the shape of it is stronger. So again, you're looking for something that's relatively flat, maybe a larger skipper stone. And I wouldn't recommend this percussion with smaller flakes. If you have a smaller flake, you want to do the bipolar, just because it's going to be more safe. You're less likely to. This takes a lot of force, and your fingers are right underneath it, and you're just not going to get the force to break this on your hand. So with your hand. So with this, I recommend a larger rock. And one thing you're looking for when you're going out is a certain angle. So if it's that angle, 90 degrees, this one right here, that's really hard to break. So if you're trying to break that, like, it's just a lot of force is going to be required to break this off. So with these rocks, you're looking at the easiest place to get into it. So the cortex is a lot stronger, and once you break that cortex, once you get into the rock, then it's going to be easier to break it. So one thing I want you to look at is the angle of this side right here. So you can see that angle. It's about 45 degrees or so. And you can do 45 or lower, I'd recommend. If it's steeper than that, it's going to be harder to break. So again, with this, it's a hard rock, and it's going to take a lot of force to do it. So sometimes you can do one strike and you have a nice flake. Other times it takes several hits. So with percussion, you look for that angle, that 45-degree angle. And another thing to look for is, if you flip the rock over, is looking for a ridge, somewhere for that force to travel. Because if you have a ridge, so when I say a ridge, that's a ridge right there. Most of this is a flat surface, but this has a ridge right here. And you're going to take some force, and you're going to strike it right at that combination of where that 45-degree angle is and where that ridge is. So that's the easiest place to get into this rock. And then you want to hold it so your fingers aren't cupping this. You want to back a little bit. And again, you want to. This is going to require a little more accuracy. So you're going to want to go ginger at first before you do full swings. But eventually you're going to have to get to a place of being like, well, I'm going to go for it. But I'm going to whack it. So let's see what happens. So after a few strikes, you can say, well, I can try a different place. And often with this method, you can get really thin flakes. Flakes just pop off. Sometimes the tip just pops off. Any questions about that, man?
Nothing fancy, but basically it's just breaking rock and getting some real basic blades and sharp edges off of rocks. And first way he showed was bipolar percussion, which is just having an anvil stone below it, something hard, big rock below it that's not going to move, and getting a thin skipping type stone and placing it on the anvil stone, hitting it firmly on the top. So the bipolar, you got force coming from the top and the bottom, and the theory would be that the energy would run right down the middle of that rock, forming two faces that have edges. And the other way is the percussion flaking, which is finding a bigger rock that you can hold in your hand and taking another hammerstone and smacking it and knocking a flake off that way.
Okay. And that can be used for arrowheads, all kinds of different purposes.
Typically with stone that you would be using to make arrowheads, you would start off by doing percussion flaking to get yourself a piece, which you would then begin to work in a more finer, detailed way.
Yep, exactly. You can just kind of run down the line and you just kind of bang at it. Hear the flakes just kind of zinging off. And with obsidian, this is a very fine, controlled technique, and you can take a series of flakes off of one side. You can flip it over. You have your angle all set up for you now on this side, and take flakes off. But if you try to take another series of flakes, you might get a nice piece. You also might have a very jagged, rough edge. So often I'll take one series of flakes off of one side, and then you have a little hand axe. You can saw things with this. I didn't really talk about using these tools, but when you're actually using these, you can't carve like you're using a knife. You have to saw them. So sawing is your main method. See, you get a groove started on one edge, and then you rotate it around, start up another groove, and you go all the way around that piece. In woods with a pith like elderberry or mullein, those woods you can go around once and you can snap them right in half. And if you can get deeper than that, this one's a little on the thick side, so it's a little hard, but you can see, you can test it. You can use the serrated edge and you can use a flat edge and see which one works better.